Hey everyone, welcome to Combat Connection, the day class mini class episode. Today we will be talking about what are we talking about?
Active defense.
Active defense and guards and how we use them today. And we have Luca, Beast, and myself, Masa. So we will get started.
So, active defense is obviously quite a point of contention when it comes to the martial arts and combat sports world, in terms of a lot of people think it's better to just have a static guard that gives you good coverage, because if you actively try to block, it could be a feint, it could leave you open, etc., etc. It might just not even work, and it'll expel your energy, and you'll get hit anyways, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not entirely sure about that. I obviously there's a lot of, especially in karate, we see a lot of big, heavy blocks that come wide. But in terms of just holding a single static guard, it still means you're taking these hits and you're not taking opportunities in terms of countering as much. I feel like with active defense, you get more opportunities to grapple, you get more opportunities to close distance, and you have to take less of the brunt of an attack incoming if you can do it right. Obviously, not every attack can be blocked. Like a Muay Thai roundhouse, checking it is better than trying to slice it with your arm or whatever. But like a lot of punches and even kicks, and obviously like grapples and stuff, you can counter them. In my opinion, what do you guys think on this?
Uh, there's usually, I think, at least just from personal experience, either a block or a parry for most things. I mean, one of the earlier skills we actually learned for Sanda is more or less like a slight way of parrying blows off to the side when it comes to like punches and kicks and things like that. Of course, we also have a lot of catching, so I mean that's also a factor, I guess. That being said, like I was saying earlier, I think there usually is some type of block or parry for most attacks. Usually, there's almost always something you can more or less do.
So when I took Shaolin Kempo, one of the things that we would learn as we got higher up is something called a moving guard, and it's just basically to keep covering all the different areas of your body so that there isn't an obvious gap in them. But then in Muay Thai, like we have, you know, checks, blocks, parries, that kind of stuff, which I think are pretty universal for striking arts.
Yeah,
Yeah. So obviously, I did Wing Chun, and Wing Chun is pretty well known for being used in a really bad way. You know, people trying to, every punch that comes to their head, they're just like trying to slap it out of the air and knock it away. And that's what a lot of people think of when they think of active blocks, active defenses. They're thinking of that, or they're thinking of, like I've said, karate, where they're like middle block, high block, low block, middle block, high block, like some freaking dance routine. Yeah. But
yeah,
like, in what I learned within Wing Chun, what I've learned from the maxims of Wing Chun, and then what I've learned going into Shorinji Kempo is that you have to. What you're meant to be doing is you're meant to be using this to get your opportunities so that you can follow through and take your attacks. Defenses aren't the way to stop an attack. Defenses are ways to open in and lead into your attacks. So if someone were to come at you with a overhand, let's just say they go with an overhand right, and you're hitting it, blocking it, and then they come up with an uppercut, and you're hitting it, blocking it, and hitting and blocking it. You messed up from the second they come up with that uppercut. If someone comes in with an overhand right, you need to step in and knock it away and hit them in the face, and then hit them in the face again, and again, and again, and again, and take them to the ground, and whatever else you need to do. Like, your defense should be offensive defense. And to be that, it has to be active. And I can see why it's safer, especially for people who don't train as much, to just hold a static guard and knock out the power of a lot of hits and like absorb the force of it into something that's going to take less damage. But if you're actively training, it's almost a waste not to train to stuff hits and take it out guards to get your attacks in, you know?
Yeah.
I would say the purpose of the static guards that people learn is just kind of to have something there until you get more familiar. Because if you have to look at a million things while doing a million things, it's overwhelming. It's just sort of learning the basics and then working your way up to that moving guard.
Yeah, I think people kind of overthink it sometimes, really. I mean, I think that's a big issue, especially with like in regards to like kung fu, like I think a lot of people more or less look at, our forms and things like that and be like, oh, well, this is how we block there. Let's just directly do that. But no, there's usually some type of tweaking that has to be done, I think, when it comes to converting anything from a form. You can't just straight up pull out some really weird ass fucking high guard. You know what I mean? You got to more or less play around with that and work that into something that, you're reasonably going to be able to do. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. In Shrinji Kempo, the way we compose our defenses, it has three elements to it: your head, your body, and your bulking tool, your arm mostly. Yeah, although we do kick checks with our legs. You have to move your head and move your body so that your target's off the line of attack. If they're hitting you in your head, then you move your head backwards. How do you do that? You turn out your back leg and put your weight on your back leg so that your head can be more side, your body's side on, they can't reach your head. Or you slip forwards in a rotational angle to go around the side of their head. If they're coming into your body, you pull your body in, turn it away, and then you can counter on a body angle level. And then we always counter with the soft part of the underneath our forearm so it's not bone to bone contact, because we're not knocking it away like karate, we're parrying it so that we can turn it into a grapple. We're sliding it around so that we can control that arm as we go into a higher level belt.
Yeah. I'm going to say personally, I gotta agree with that for the most part. I mean, that's pretty much the way I go about things too. I mean, naturally fighting usually from an outboxing style of positioning, I usually go with like either a shell guard or some type of just relatively high guard, with a little bit of a hunch to it, so that way I can't just, eat a damn kick to the stomach. But for the most part, yeah, I'd say it's pretty much close to the same. If I can parry something, I'm going to do it. In fact, like yesterday, was, since I've started, learning a lot of things regarding to like knife fighting and things like that, you can't necessarily block if you're fighting with fucking knives. So we've been really doing like a lot of just parrying actions or just, moving the hand out of the way so you can set up for something else. And that was really a big aspect of both Kung Fu and even in Muay Thai. So yeah.
I mean, I think it's also just sort of a preference. I like to rotate between different types of guards just because I'm still kind of trying to feel out what works best for me because I'm still new to the Muay Thai world. And then it's also kind of feeling out your opponent and seeing what they're receptive to and what trips them up and how to deal with them. It's just a constant learning process, but I know in the beginning it's a lot easier to just kind of stick with one static guard. But then I do understand that there are people who tend to get stuck there and don't realize that there's a lot more out there than what they're taught.
That's the thing. In the previous episode of mini class, we talked about like our guard and our body positioning and how we protect ourselves, where we place our hands when we're fighting. But one thing that happens, and obviously I think you see this the most in boxing, as boxing has several types of guards. As you move about and as you have different things coming in or you're using different things, your hands naturally move. Everyone always says, keep your head covered, keep your hands up. But that doesn't work for every technique. You have to have different positioning and different angles to use different techniques to keep yourself covered in different ways when you're changing the way you're standing.
Yeah. Gotta say, like, this is going to be probably, my little weeb moment for the day. But the way I've always more or less viewed guards, blocks, and everything, regardless just for any art, I've always, like, anybody who's either read or watched, I guess, part of Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple, I specifically read it. I mean, the anime did a decent job, but it was more so defined in a manner that's actually applicable manga-wise. But the Seikuken concept is honestly something I think that reigns true no matter what. I mean, what it really boils down to is just distance, time, knowing your own reaction, knowing how close you are, and what environment you're in within different situations, and that sort of aspect. Like if I don't have my gloves on, then I'm probably going to use a guard that isn't as static. Like I'm not going to be using my shell guard. I'm probably going to have one hand close to my face, one hand relatively down, just so that just because I know at that point, hey, I don't have that glove that's taking me that couple seconds of delay before I land that punch. I can just more or less get in, get out, just have that speed to me. I don't have all that weighted gear on. In that sense that, your guard more or less changes, I feel, just situationally speaking as well. So, yeah.
Well, I know in Muay Thai, like, we have specific guards for, like, if we're going to knee, we'll have, like, a handout just kind of, like, in front of the opponent's face. But obviously we don't do other attacks like that. Like, that's a specific thing for the knee. Or if we're getting, like, a hook, we'll have our elbow up to help kind of block that. So it kind of also depends on the art and just kind of how you're taught, because there are different guards out there, and sometimes it's a guard that you'll stay in as you fight, and sometimes it's a specific guard while you're doing a specific move.
But in terms of like one thing that really came up to me when I was thinking about using active guard, and one thing that made me have a realization about how it works or should be working, I was watching a video by a Wing Chun Sifu, and it was one of the they were involved in choreographing one of the Ip Man movies, which I love those films. They don't have the most accurate fight scenes in terms of actual fighting, but in terms of form and like demonstrative purposes, masterful choreography there. Some of the best in all of martial arts cinema history, really. And he was talking about how from the classical Wing Chun guard, where you have your hands out and they're open, your whole defense is turning your hips and turning your hand. You can turn your hand one way to block a jab, you can turn it the other way to block a hook, and if the hook's coming the other way, you just turn your hips or you block with the other hand.
Oh, okay. I concur. I mean, there is this whole concept of quote unquote riding shots where you go within the direction of the shot that's coming, so you can take the edge off it. So that's kind of neat. As for the whole active guard thing, I believe it's important to keep in mind, I guess, objective as well as like stylistic preference. And I believe when it comes to like really any guard can be a guard you default to with some variations, because I mean within the case of like a long guard, or I guess like a cross guard or something, it's really, they're things that just aren't very comfortable to hold all the time, and that includes high guard as well. So you might sacrifice certain things like visibility or like comfort. So the actual resting position or that you hold whilst using that guard might be different than what you actually, you know what I mean? And that can lead to um, putting more into actually having a more active defense as opposed to relying on that one guard, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of got the conclusion that as much as people will always say to cover just one area and guard in this one particular way, your guard has to be fluid at a higher level. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything for you. If you're staying one thing, that's not going to help you very much. You need to be able to adapt. And then in terms of moving out of just guarding and going into the blocking, even if let's disregard just hand to hand for a second. Let's say we have weapons combat, yeah?
Oh
If
boy.
someone is coming in to attack you, someone name me a random weapon you might get jumped with.
Fucking machete,
Crowbar?
Okay,
fucking
machete,
baseball
crowbar.
bat, fucking shiv, a
Okay, okay,
freaking toothbrush
okay.
shiv.
Calm down, calm down. You said baseball. Let's go with baseball bat. Someone has a baseball bat. They're going to hit you with a baseball bat. Are you going to try and step out of the way and keep your hands up? Or do you think it might be better to step in and actively control and stop it before it comes over?
Well, I think
That's resistant.
I think it depends on space. If you've got enough space to stay out of the way, then do that. At which point, draw a weapon of your own to even shit out, or just run away. Run away. I hate that run away. Like you're putting your physical attributes at you know in a way that's like more closely in competition with them, and you're giving them a better chance of overtaking you than if someone with martial arts technique or skill or whatever, had to just
Well,
fight them.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't think running is an option in either of our cases. I'm just too heavy, and you've got your own issues there.
But I know, like, in terms of someone jumping you with a weapon, majority of the times, if they're pulling that weapon out, they're not going to pull it out in a range where you have where you're out of their attacking range, or at least by far. They'll pull out. We were talking on our timing and range about in Kempo we have the three ranges. We have the in combat range, the single step to in combat range, and the multiple step to in combat range. And it varies with weapons. And with weapons, they're gonna be at least in the single or like 3 steps to combat, maybe at most.
See, I mean, when it
Maybe not
comes
with a baseball bat. You can't conceal a baseball bat as
I was
much, but
the problem I have with a baseball bat analogy in the first place is that's a weapon where unless you're like I don't know like some really like some straight up Street Fighter level fucking Muay Thai dude where your arms are just somehow as hard as that damn bat, I'd probably just get the fuck out of the way until they
But
over.
you can't. That's what I was like. Active having a static guard. If a baseball bat claps your arm is screwed. So what you need to do is you need to get into a closer position and actively block where you can get their arms rather than the front of the bat as it swings over. That's
Yeah,
the
that
whole
makes
point. Like obviously, baseball bat is a higher scale of blunt impact than getting hit. However, with an active cover up and no other guard or protection, you're still taking multiple blunt hits to a certain part of your body and waiting for your position to open or trying to keep yourself as safe as that. If you have the ability to actively stop and close that distance and utilize it through your active defense, I feel it makes more sense to do that rather than cover up and use a static
yeah. That's fair. I wouldn't cover up at all. I'd probably just wait until they swung way too far, just move in, and then fuck them up.
What do you think, Masa, in that sort of area when it comes to like heavy blunt impacts or repetitive blunt impacts?
I mean, I would never want to be dealing with a weapon. I have no idea how you would guard against
You have
that.
done before though. You just ignored it.
I mean, yeah, apparently, but apparently walking away and being oblivious worked in that situation,
So
which is not the norm. So
Yeah,
the guy was not committed clearly to the attack in that situation.
you might have just confused him, honestly. Because I mean,
Maybe it was like Troom defense, and he thought you were blind and felt bad for you.
Oh my god, Troom Troom. Oh, they're so
Okay,
crazy.
in my personal opinion, defense against a weapon with your bare hands is as good as useless. For the reason being that weapons exist for the express purpose to give you, it's essentially a damage multiplier, and that you can do more damage with that weapon with less effort than it would take you to do without that weapon.
You
So
still
if
need to
someone,
train with weapons to use them.
that's not what I'm saying. Of course you do. Like otherwise, you're just going to default to the training that you know and might end up getting hurt because you're unfamiliar with that
Okay,
setting
so
in which
you
weapons
think
are.
that it doesn't matter about using active or static blocks. If someone has a blunt weapon, you're going to lose no matter what. Even if
Okay, I think when it comes to all weapons, if you if you think if you are able to observe and notice if someone might have a weapon on you, uh, your best time to act is when they are drawing it, because at that point you can resort to grappling and control that weapon and potentially take them to the ground or get leverage that would mitigate that, and you can go into your offensive from there, draw your own weapon, or fucking book it. Again, I'm not a proponent for running in self-defense situations, but that's still an option.
you don't really
Um,
draw a baseball bat though, where we're talking like if you have a baseball bat, you have a baseball. It's not hidden. You're walking with it. You're hiding out somewhere waiting for someone.
that's true, but I mean, posture is important. If someone is just standing there with it versus being threatening with it, you know, you could totally observe that, take advantage of it.
I don't
Or,
care how they're standing with it. If I see someone in the streets carrying a baseball bat and they're not wearing baseball gear, I'm suspicious.
well, yeah, obviously I'd be suspicious. But the point is, if someone is already in a position to attack you with something that is meant to hurt you really bad, that you as a normal physical human being wouldn't aren't capable of matching because of your physiology, and you lack that same tool that they have, you're getting fucked. Like, because those weapons exist for the express purpose of doing more damage than you are able to, more efficiently than you are able to. So if you
If
lack
you know how to use it. The majority of people that are coming out on the streets to hit you with a blunt weapon are
even
training blunt weaponry, and if you have superior grappling and superior movement, you can avoid and close the distance and control their
well,
attack.
that's what I'm saying. The idea you have, like, you're not gonna out, you're not gonna. Okay, whew, all right. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is like, okay, of course, if you have training of some kind and they don't, that's a factor. But yeah, resort to grappling
That's
as
entirely what
opposed.
we're talking about.
Okay, well, as opposed to striking, because striking will, and there's too many variables. God damn
That's
it! I
literally
just
what we're talking. We're talking about actively trying to stop and control the attack rather than taking the front of an attack, and whether there's just the transfer of force from a weapon or the repeated transfer of force from continuous blows, and whether you should treat hand-to-hand striking the same way you would treat that kind of weapon attack because you're still taking damage.
well, I mean, when it comes to just fighting people without weapons, um, I think it's important. Okay, one of the things people don't do that I think is kind of imperative to having a better defense is training defense as much as we train offense. You see people hit the bag, and they might be competent enough to, you know, be kind of realistic about how they're hitting the bag, and that they'll be using feints or head movement or footwork to try and set stuff up or something of that nature. but you won't really see people working exclusively defense, at least not on the same level that you see with offense. And I think that comes into people think, oh, well, you're not going to be, you can't block everything. You're going to get hit eventually, or like you whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But in the same vein, you can't hit everything. Something's going to, it's the same thing. Why do we put so much emphasis on practicing offense? I think if we took the time to isolate defense and work on it, uh, we'd get a lot more competent with our defense, and we'd get a lot more comfortable with dealing with various kinds of attacks. And
Referring to static or just active block
re-
within the context of
ref-
baseball.
referring to okay, I took the whole weapons out of the equation. I was just making a little
We're
side
not
note
talking
that
about weapons. We're Aaron. Uh,
I was talking to. I personally believe that people don't think it's realistic to practice defense all the time. And I agree, but I think we could still get our defense at a higher level if we were to isolate it and practice, just you being in charge of defending yourself and having a guy throw stuff at you, you know, being active and being, you know, basically building those same like muscle memory type habits that you would have with your strikes, but in your defense. That way you can work that into the rest of your stuff. All defense should be active defense. That was the point I was trying to get at. Having a static guard to revert to is good for beginners. It gets them, comfortable with getting back into their guard, and so they don't get caught being lazy and dropping their hands and whatnot. But that's the point I was trying to make. You have to, through the same amount of repetition you put into your offense, your striking training, you need to be putting into your defense to make it as natural as throwing your combinations or whatever. And I
I feel
feel
like
that
it's
gets overlooked.
mostly the ones that don't do that are just the ones that don't believe. Because to say it has not done is a little like disregarding of everything that does it, which is like what we were saying before about how we trained it. And I don't think I wanted to ask a bit more Beast about how you guys trained it, because obviously you train a combat sport, you don't train a traditional martial art in that sense. And obviously combat sports have been less regarded towards the active defense. So how much and how did you guys train your active blocks and apply them through Sanda versus just like how we
When it,
do it in say Kempo?
yeah, when it comes to our active blocks, I mean, it really more so comes down to a thing of whether you're. I guess it is situational, I suppose, in the aspect that if you can pull it off, I guess pull it off. I mean, a lot of our stuff is, if you can slip out of the way, you can sidestep it, then you're golden. I don't see too many things where you could really more or less, you know, I guess, like, I don't know. We do a lot. I mean, personally, I do a lot of redirection stuff, but I guess it really does just come down to preference, I suppose. I mean, we learn it and we do try and apply it, I suppose, to a degree, but it's not a huge thing. Either you're going to slip it, take it, or parry it, and that's more or less it. We don't really over complicate things for the most part. I'm sorry, that wasn't a super cooler answer, I suppose.
Yeah, I concur. That's pretty much it. Either you catch it or parry it in some way, slip it or block it. That's pretty much it. Or just step out of range. But yeah, that's it.
I mean, we have like kick checks and stuff and like redirections, but it's not really a thing of, it's something we learn, but it's more so if you want to do that, then yeah, cool, do that, dude. You don't really have a big thing of where, we're drilling. You always have to parry the shot this specific way. So if you're comfortable doing that and you have the capability of doing it, then go for it.
Yeah, that's the same. It's we at my gym. Everybody pretty much learns same thing, and we kind of just drew it in. We just break it down into, okay, you've got some experience now. What's your stylistic preference? Are you more Do you like blocking or slipping or catching or using an active kind of guard? What do you like doing? And then you kind of just get comfortable, doing that. Me personally, my head movement and footwork is ass, so I rely a lot on my guard extensively because I suck. So I try to be very active with it. So
Yeah, that's fair.
that's me. That's just, again, my personal preference. I think that's more common out in the combat sports sphere. I mean, this is just my personal observation, because with traditional martial arts, you might have that pressure to do it as your teacher is telling you to do it. Um, so, and I actually have a funny story in sparring. I was sparring a new guy, and I couldn't for the life of me. Again, my head movement is really subpar, so I was relying a lot on catching and all manner of those sort of things. And my coach thought I was trying to be like disrespectful to the guy by be like showboaty, but I really wasn't. And he understood. Like, I explained it to him after we were done. Like, I wasn't trying to be mean. That's literally just how I'm comfortable with defense. I'm not very good at much else. So
I
yeah.
think what's disregarded in terms of that kind of defense is something that that people in striking talk about a lot is flow. And when it comes to attacking, your flow, people's flows are always on point. But when it comes to active defense, everyone seems to see it as like a two-step, three-step done kind of deal. No one seems to want to drill it in continuous, which is why in Kempo we have from yellow belt onwards up until brown belt we have our Renhanko sequence. Renhanko is follow through, the concept of following through. So every technique we do for our striking training syllabus, we have to use Renhanko to follow through, which is Junsaki Jodan, Gyakusaki Chudan, Junmoashige. So jab to the head, back to the body, and roundhouse kick. And then from brown belt afterward, we still use Renhanko, but we make our own sequence for it. And the idea there is we can't look at it as separate or look at it as one and done. We need to continue through the fight. One of our senseis at a seminar recently said, rely on redundancy. You might not need it, but for when you do, you need to know that you're going to need it.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes, you know, what appears sometimes things just have simple solutions. That's why you stick to what works. You stick to your foundation because this shit works for a reason. So that's why you kind of have two avenues. You got to stick to your base and also branch out and become your own individual. And in doing that, you'll be, a better martial artist. But people always forget. They see all the fancy, cool stuff, and they always forget to go back to what was working for them to begin with.
It's reminding me of that story of a story I heard. I think it was Silala, the Wing Chun MMA fighter, was doing a thing, and he was talking about a Western boxer who went to China and trained. He trained Tongbei Chuan. Tongbei Chuan is a Shaolin form. It's one of the more basic forms, and he reported like his speed in his ability in fighting it doubled his striking speed because of the flow and control he managed to get from implementing this one form, like a kata from Shaolin, into his boxing.
Mm. Say what you will about traditional forms, if they're not good at uh, building muscle memory and repetition, I don't know what is, because that's kind of the bread and butter, I would imagine. You know, physical stamina and repetition. I mean,
You want to hear about what repetition at a Kempo meet once? I was talking to one of the brown belts who also trained Bagua and young Tai Chi. and he said they will do 6-hour training sessions where they hold every stance from their form for half an hour.
Nah, I'm good, mate. I ain't doing that mess. I don't need none of that. Thank you.
Anyway, does anyone have any closing thoughts on the ideas of active defense versus standard guards and static guards?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, much of the same thing, I guess, as to how we do things. Just, I think when it comes down to static and active blocks, do what works for you and do it, you know, and use what you have to use within said situations. Not everything is going to work within every fight, but it's important to at least, understand that and pick and choose what you can work through and what you can accomplish rather than just trying to, actively pull something out your ass that, you're not able to use.
Um. Uh. I don't. I guess. I guess I'll revert back to what I said earlier, real quick, and that it is important to have a static guard to go back to. Um. You know, just to have built into you, so you're not making bad. You're not. To have that defensive responsibility, like we teach with new people, to be able to resort back to their stance. Um, but also rely on that active defense and not to be shy away from it. Um, Realize that it is a part of your style. You can incorporate into your rhythm, and that it'll help elevate your offense just as much as just being able to do your basic sequences or whatever. You know.
And with that, guys, I think we are finished with this here discussion. Thank you for tuning into a day class mini class episode with Luca, Beast, Masa, and Master D, who joined us halfway through. If you like what you see here, don't forget to hit like on the YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments below what you think about guards, what your guard looks like, and what you want to see next time. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram. It's Combat Connections, our blog, www.combatconnections.something. I can't remember. I think it's .org. Find us. We've got a blue mountain with 2 white seas in the middle. It's not that difficult, guys. And until next time, keep training. Peace.